Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle, and in this one we got ourselves another update for the comic book index. That's right, we are in the month of July. I hope you guys had a wonderful 4th of July day and a great 4th of July weekend. Well, we got comics and we got numbers to talk about, and it certainly seems like collectors have been enjoying their summer breaks because we've already talked about some of the big books at Heritage Auctions and the Giant Size X-Men underperforming out there in the auctions most recently. So did that actually trickle over to the median values of comic books? Well, in this video, we're definitely going to talk about it. But of course, before I get into the video, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Helps support the channel doing those things. But let us get into the comic book index here today. Now, I think you guys already know what the comic book index is, but in case you don't, it is the top 100 sold books per age, silver, bronze, copper. I take the highest volume of grade. That's the one that I focus on within those key books. I take the final sale of each month, aka the market close, and I get all of my info from GPA data. So suffice to say, if I was going to take the top 100 most in-demand comics, how much would it cost me to buy them on a month-by-month basis? Now, important thing to point out before I really get into the weeds, I do want to hop over to the GoCollect comic book index, which I made a video talking about how they released their index, and I figure that maybe we can do, a combined thing here where we show my numbers compared to their numbers and see where things correlate or see if there's any discrepancies between the two. So that should be good to see. But let's focus in on my numbers here. Silver Age index for May of 2024, we were down to the $43,685 level, a little bit lower than that of April, but not by much. And for the last 6 months or so, we basically been kind of, oscillating up and down, but going sideways, maybe going a little bit higher if we're optimistic, if we start measuring from back in October of 23. But where do we go in the month of June? Well, we did go a little bit lower. Once again, it does seem like, we're sort of in the summer lulls. People are kind of off, on their vacations, maybe not so focused on comic books. We've kind of been feeling that with the big ticket item sales like Detective 27, the Giant Size X-Men number 199, things of that nature. And while, of course, there are big sales going out there as well, I do think that, it's a little bit soft. We're still waiting for San Diego Comic-Con and some of the big announcements. And also there's, macroeconomic factors that we sort of have to go against. But 42,265, still higher than some of the lows we've seen previously, in March and also in October of 23. So effectively with margin of error in there, I do sort of feel like, silver has basically still been going sideways for the time being. But let's jump ahead to Bronze Age right here. And this is the one that is, I don't know if you want to call this one maybe concerning, but I won't spoil it. Let's talk about it here. In May of 2024, we were at $33,985. That was one of the lowest numbers that we had actually seen for the index over the last, 3 years or so. So where did we go in the month of June? Well, we went even lower to $31,988. We are at levels, kind of rivaling that of mid-2020 for the Bronze Age. And, the Bronze Age is an interesting one because there's a lot of books in here that, had the early inflate. If you think about your She-Hulk #1, your Moon Knight #1, your Eternals #1, a lot of those books really started to pick up steam all the way back in 2018, 2019, and, even 2020, those were books that were, pretty hot. They were in pretty much demand even before we got the boom of 2021. So now we're in a place where those books still continue to struggle. So you do sort of wonder if the Bronze Age has a little bit more to go still. Maybe this is that point where we're actually starting to see a separation between silver and bronze books. And while Silver Age isn't necessarily, as rare, quote unquote, as, Golden Age census, it is still lower than that of Bronze Age census. So you would sort of think that there would be, more of a safety to have some of those Silver Age books. So maybe we're starting to feel it here in the month of June. Well, let's flash forward here to the Copper Age index. In May of 2024, we were surprisingly at 23,463, which was slightly up from the previous month. Well, where do we go here in the month of June? Well, much like Bronze Age, we took a big nosedive down to the $21,948 level. Now, this isn't the lowest number. That honor actually goes to where we were in January at $21,753, but this is the second lowest number that we've seen for this graph. So Bronze Age and Copper Age definitely on struggle street, and there you guys see the graphs side by side. How does this track for you guys? I do think that it'll be interesting later on in the video when I jump forward to the GoCollect index. It's nice to have something to compare to. I think that we have similar takeaways so far in our estimations of what is going on with comic books here in the summer month of June. But let's fast forward to the key takeaways just to give you guys this info in case you really want it. Silver Age, we're at 43,685 down to 42,265, a decrease of 3%. Bronze Age, 33,985 down to 31,988, a decrease of 6%, which 6% for this graph is actually fairly significant. And then in June of 2024 for Copper Age, we went down to 21,948, also a decrease of 6%. Now, the key takeaways for silver, 11% were down, 14% were up, but 30% non-sale. Now, 30% non-sale, as far as how I've been calculating this graph, is a pretty big number. That definitely seems like, the demand side of the equation has been fairly low in the month of June. Usually you would want to be around 20%, and that would sort of usually indicate that it would be an up month. Similarly, bronze book values, 20% were down. That is a really big number for Bronze Age. Usually it's more around, 10, 11, 12% in any given month, but 20% is fairly significant. 13% were up, and then 14% non-sale, which is also a big non-sale factor for Bronze Age. Now here in the month by month for Silver Age, we see that we are at the purple line, so right smack dab in the middle. And I've made mention on the channel with this series many times before that I kind of feel like this year is going to look similar to that of the cyan line, where we're going to kind of slowly trickle down, throughout the rest of the calendar year and maybe start to turn that corner November and December, when macroeconomic factors might start to get a little bit better. I don't necessarily think that we're going to be dipping below the yellow line, which of course is 2020. There might be times when we, touch it, but I suspect that, the natural rate of inflation is going to keep us above that. But I do sort of feel like we're going to be matching that cyan line for the rest of the calendar year. And of course, there is the trend line. Of course, this is not drawn to scale, so we can't put too much stock into it. Silver seems to be doing okay in Bronze Age. Maybe you can kind of make that argument that, again, a lot of these books are underperforming. And it's sort of hard to say. I mean, if you think about a Moon Knight #1, where, it's a book that nobody can even give that thing away. I mean, once upon a time, the Moon Knight #1 9/8 were selling for $1,000, $1,100, $1,200. Now they sell for $200. But should it have never even gotten to $500? And that's one of the things that's sort of hard to tell is like when you think about that book, I mean, it started to get hot in 2018, but maybe the fact that it got hot in 2018 is already an indication that the book was overinflated. But before I wrap up the video and give you guys my sort of final bear and bull case scenarios, let's hop over to the GoCollect index and kind of take a look at what their numbers are showing. So let's focus in firstly on the Silver Age numbers. This, of course, is very interesting. If you guys haven't seen my breakdown of their index, I'll put a link in the description to this video. But similar to our graph right here, they have been showing that the CPI value for Silver Age has been on the decline for the most part, although I've been seeing more of an uptrend, starting in October and November. So it really depends on how this graph is being calculated here. But let's sort of see if there's any books in here that have really taken off. I mean, Adventure Comics number 247, that could be, a book that is heavily inflating the index. You have Action Comics 252 that seems to have gotten, very, very big numbers. Action Comics 242, another one that has gotten, very big numbers recently. So definitely a lot of the DC books, I think, are keeping this one afloat, although I do also have some of those DC books in my index as well. But, very, very interesting to see that. I mean, we definitely are in alignment that June was a lower month than that of May for Silver Age. Now let's hop over to the Bronze Age and see what their graph is actually talking about here. I think this is where we are definitely lockstep together, where yes, the Bronze Age has been on the decline. We know this for the most part ever since that of last year. And then here in May, we definitely kind of got that nosedive that I sort of saw in my graph as well. So interesting to see that. I mean, let's see, take a look at some of their books, see what ones are doing well or falling off of a cliff right there. You guys can just sort of pause and take a look and see if any of these books interest you for the most part. Of course, the way that they calculate it is across different grades. I focus on one particular grade, although I focus on more books overall. They focus on less books, but more grades overall. Okay, lastly, let's take a look at the Copper Age. And again, ours are similar. down, down, down. It's been going down. And then May is a little bit higher than that of June. So it looks like maybe they picked up last couple days or so. But generally speaking, June has been a lower month than that of May. I'll kind of just scrub through if you guys want to take a look at any of the graphs overall. Well, there you guys have it. That's the update for the comic index for the month of June. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about the numbers? It's interesting to me. It does sort of feel like we are in this kind of tweener phase right now. You know, it feels like interest in comic books generally is a little bit down. It's not to say that, you know, it's the end of the world, or that, you know, there isn't a lot of buying out there, or there isn't, you know, a strong market. It's just that I think people are sort of in waiting mode. You know, there isn't much excitement. You know, even with the Giant Size X-Men #1, that was one of the things that we talked about. And while I've, you know, sort of changed my tune in terms of my thinking that it got a really good number, which I actually do think at the end of the day, it got a huge number. I mean, considering what it is, you know, a lot of people expected it to go a lot higher, and it really didn't feel like there was much hype going into that book. And I wonder if that's, you know, kind of the lack of energy. I mean, we had X-Men '97, and that was sort of driving a lot of excitement in the market. And then once that show ended, you know, we're sort of in this holding pattern, waiting for Deadpool and Wolverine to come out. And I do really think it'll be interesting to see if, you know, San Diego Comic-Con has any effect on the comic book market moving forward. I do think that there are, of course, a lot of macroeconomic, you know, things that are kind of holding things down. I mean, you know, the economy is still tough. You know, it's hard to find your budget to be spending money on comic books, all things considered. But I do think we are maybe in a place where, you know, now it's the pop cultural excitement that needs some stimulus to be injected into comic books once again. But what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about the numbers? How are you guys feeling out there about comics right now? What's going on with your buying? What are you guys seeing with the numbers? Are you a dealer? Are you seeing values go down, or have you been seeing values go up? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.